So you think it's over now, or you think it's still lingering?
Oh no, it's definitely still lingering. It's the fight has changed. There has been sweeping action at almost every level of the government around this, positive action. The State Department killed the granddaddy of the censorship government agencies, this place called the Global Engagement Center. It then went through this, it's now going through a restructuring where they're chopping 130 different sub-agencies out of the State Department, including a complete restructuring of a place called DRL, Democracy, Rights, and Labor, which is the big color revolution, overthrow government side of the State Department. And they've cut a huge proportion of the grants out of that. The shutdown of USAID was absolutely massive. USAID was spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year paying censorship organizations to execute censorship, promote censorship laws, promote censorship judicial edicts through the rule of law programs. The National Science Foundation, which is an unbelievably big money gun for this, that's basically the civilian side of DARPA. DARPA is the military. When they do dual-use civilian work, it runs through the National Science Foundation. They gave hundreds of millions of dollars to the National Science Foundation for the study of the science of disinformation. It was just censorship operations laundered through disinformation studies. Those grants have been massively, massively cut. NIH has killed millions of dollars in these grants for science disinformation. And so the military shut down the Minerva Initiative, which was the psychological operations research center of the Pentagon, which was doing all this censorship work as well, because they said, disinformation is part of the hearts and minds war. And so we need to fund all these university centers to work with NGOs to flag, trending narratives online. So we have all these huge wins here, which have shut down several very major censorship cells. But those places are waiting to get back into power through the House of Representatives in 2026, where it's currently looking projected, according to polling data. So I hear that the Democrats have a very good chance of taking back the House in 2026. That's going to give them control over committees. That's going to give them subpoena power. That's going to allow them to drag people in for transcribed interviews. That's going to allow them to do these public hearings. And it will also give them a much bigger say in the budget. And the budget fight is ultimately how funding is done. And they are going to be lobbying very hard to resuscitate those censorship grants. And there are going to be a lot of Republican allies, internationalist, anti-MAGA Republicans in Congress, who are going to vote with the Democrats on that, because they too have an interest in stopping populism. Oil companies who want markets in Eurasia, who would want us to spend billions of dollars on war, they also want to make sure that Marine Le Pen doesn't get elected in France, because she's running on reinstating French-Russian energy relations. They also are going to want the German Marshall Fund to get millions of dollars censoring the AfD party in Germany, because AfD is running on restoring the Nord Stream pipeline. And that will, potentially hurt the markets for U.S. LNG companies who have stolen that market after Ukraine and the CIA blew that up. And so, the fight is, we're way better now than where we were, but this fight is going to be eternal. And it's also an international one now with all these foreign censorship laws that we talked about before.
This is where my head goes. I'm a chess player. I like to think a little ahead. If the censorship stuff kind of fails or doesn't work as effective as they think it will, I think they're going to start acquiring. So I think they'll start acquiring podcasts. Like you see Soros is already buying them up.
Yeah.
And they'll start just controlling the narrative, because alternative media is getting a lot of eyeballs these days. And I look around and I see like more and more shows saying more interesting things, to say the least. And I'm like, are they compromised?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is what they have been doing. And what's really interesting now, because, so the State Department spends billions of dollars buying media. USAID spends billions of dollars buying media. The Pentagon spends billions of dollars buying media. This has been going on forever. And it really accelerated after Trump won in 2016 because of social media freedom. The autopsy of the 2016 election by David Brock, who was the big political hitman for the Democrat Party. He used to be a political hitman for the Republicans, and then he switched for Hillary Clinton and became he ran Correct the Record and a bunch of these other super PACs for the Democrats. And the autopsy that he published for a meeting with like 120 Silicon Valley executives in January 2017 was that the reason the Democrats lost the 2016 election was because of free speech on social media. And that the plan to take back power in 2020 and in the House and Senate in 2018 would require getting those voices censored on social media. They published a whole plan. It was a 49-page document published in the Washington Free Beacon. Everyone can look this up. It was January 2017. I think Breitbart also published it, 49-page leaked David Brock memo. And it talked about how we lost because there was too much free speech on social media. And they ran all these empirical studies of the largest political Facebook pages, Instagram accounts, YouTube traffic, Twitter hashtags. And they found that by a factor of like 3 or 4 to 1, even though Democrats, the entire broadcast TV networks were something like 95 to 97% pro-Hillary. All the, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, obviously, but even Fox News was not, was not really pulling for Trump in 2016. There was a big, until he won the nomination, there was no support at Fox for Trump. They had wanted him to lose very badly, and then even when he won, they were very ambivalent. But they said, even though we completely dominated on network news, it was outweighed by the reach and the dominance of pro-Trump voices on social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. And so they literally set out this playbook 2 weeks before Trump was even inaugurated, that the plan to stop this from ever happening again was to put pressure on the social media companies to take them down, to work with the NGOs, to build a transatlantic alliance with Europe in order to cram down on this, to threaten them with regulation, threaten them with antitrust, threaten them with fines, threaten to withhold regulatory approvals for various things. And that's exactly what they did. And at that time, the other side of this, so my foundation is called Foundation for Freedom Online. And when I picked that name, I thought, that's what I want to call it. But the problem is everyone's going to think that I'm a censorship organization if I call it Foundation for Freedom Online, because every major NGO or nonprofit organization that has the word freedom in it was started during the Cold War as an asset for the State Department to selectively promote free speech so that U.S. government interests could be built up in the region. And then when the 2016 election happened, they all advocated internet censorship. So all of the worst offenders have the word freedom in their name.
Ironic.
Like Freedom House is a great example of this. Freedom House is it's a organization that was created by Congress. It was created by Congress during the Cold War in order to promote free speech and freedom of expression, and does country rankings of every country and goes through in just granular detail every way that they infringe on free speech rights of civil society organizations, NGOs, activists, community groups, and independent news media. So, they in 2013, for example, Freedom House had this blistering report on the Great Firewall of China and how China has the temerity to use government resources to censor speech by dissidents in China against the government. 2017, Freedom House turns around and says that the United States actually is an autocratic country like China. You can read this, I think, in their 2023 or 2024 report. They say this almost explicitly, that because it doesn't do what China did in 2013, they categorize the attacks on the Disinformation Governance Board and the shutdown of the Disinformation Governance Board as an attack on free speech. They're an attack on freedom because disinformation is a threat to democracy. And so you're getting dinged in your democracy score by not having government censorship. But these same groups are also passing funds on to media organizations all over the world. 90% of Ukrainian media outlets are funded by USAID or the US State Department. We buy up the media in order to create the surround sound of the message. NATO is taking social cohesion and social digital resilience funds and paying TikTok influencers to promote NATO's war agenda. This has been going on a long, long time. The National Endowment for Democracy, the CIA cutout, has a whole center called the Center for International Media Assistance, that means financial assistance, funding them. USAID, in their democracy, rights, and governance, funds media outlets. The State Department's Public Diplomacy Office funds media outlets. The National Science Foundation funds media outlets. The fact is this gobbling up of media has been going on for a long time, but the thing that I think to take heart in is at least now they'll have to buy it themselves. They were buying it with our money. They were buying influencers. That we pay NATO. The United States pays for more than half of NATO's budget, and NATO is spending that money on buying up TikTok influencers and Instagram influencers. At least now, leave the NATO thing. At least now, USAID will not be funding them, God willing. And I believe that Secretary Rubio is doing the right thing on here, and the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy, Darren Beattie, has been doing great work on this as well. So at least now Soros will have to buy it with his own money. Piero Midyar, Craig Newmark, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation will have to buy media rather than them working with our government to steal our money to buy our own friends.
Yeah.
For their allegiance to write hit pieces on us. And you see this. If you go to the big philanthropy pages, if you go to DevX or Open Philanthropy or philanthropy.com and these type of places, you will see that there is a panic right now about there's so much pressure on the big donors to pick up the slack of these cutbacks by Trump 1 or by Trump 2.0. And just recently, Bill Gates announced that he will be spending $200 billion over the next 20 years on Gates Foundation grants. So $200 billion. So the Gates Foundation is basically stepping up to become the new big daddy USAID for all these issues. And the Gates Foundation funds a huge amount of this censorship work. All that stuff about COVID censorship, well, all that is a huge threat to Gavi and to all of the pharmaceutical companies that Bill Gates owns or has huge equity investments in. And so the Gates Foundation is sort of becoming now this big floating USAID. I mean, $200 billion is just a huge amount to think about. I mean,
unfathomable.
USAID is a $44 billion annual budget, which is a huge amount of money. But the Gates Foundation is now going to have $200 billion. Now that's over 20 years, but that's $20 billion a year. And that was just announced last month. But at least now they'll have to pay for it.
Wherever you guys are watching this show, I would truly appreciate it if you follow or subscribe. It helps a lot with the algorithm. It helps us get bigger and better guests, and it helps us grow the team. Truly means a lot. Thank you guys for supporting, and here's the episode.